everybody. I want to talk about practices, and I want to talk about more cyclical practices and my own practices. And the way that I really see it is, we, especially with working with plant medicine and working with retreats and ceremonies and having people out of their everyday life, helping them, like in a dieta or something like that, helping them out in the forest, going through these deep transformational things and then coming home. And I think like these things, it's really important and powerful to go out and expand ourselves. But when we come home, like it is equally important to integrate it and to live it in our lives. That's like the whole point, right? Or part of it, to like in this experience, like be that. And we can go out in the forest and have these really big experiences of a greater self and then come back and forget it all. And that's where I see practices being like the core, like the stones, the pillars that are keeping the temple up. And I see it, for me, I see it in my relationship. I see it with myself and with my own practices of like having the practices every day, weekly or monthly, like whatever we do in normal life that supports our journey. And I think whether it is, having therapy or like me and my partner, we have couples therapy, and that's really like, it helps us so much to like understand each other on a deeper level. And so we have couples therapy, but we also have like weekly dates where we'll like every week have different types of dates together, and that's like keep on filling our like couples jaw into having all these amazing flowers that can start blooming. But they can only bloom because they're being nourished from this place of our practices together. So that's like in the relationship, but it's also as a person, like with me being a practitioner of, for instance, cacao ceremonies and like holding space for other people. It is my own practices with myself and with nature that's like keeping everything up. And I think I'm so passionate about this, and I think it's so interesting also because it's like, what is a practice even? And I think many of us have studied different things. Like I went to India and studied yoga, and I was in the jungle and I studied with my teacher, which I love, and I love to continue studying there. But many of these traditions are very masculine in a way of like, you sit the same time a day in the same way doing the same practices, and you're very masculine disciplined. And over the years, what I really realized is that I'm not the same every day. I can't get up at 5 every morning and do the same practice. That is really not how I'm wired. And I see my partner doing, not that he does that, but it's like he gets up super early and then he goes and he meditates and he does this thing. And it's beautiful and perfect that it works for him, but it doesn't work for me in the same way. And realizing over time that it's not that I'm inconsistent, but I can actually be consistent in my inconsistency, because my inconsistency is merely that I am a cyclical being, so that I am not the same every day. And thus my practice, it doesn't work for me personally to then do the same practice every day, because I am constantly different. So for me, there's something about really tuning into my cycle, into where I am in my body, where I am on the earth, what year it is. Maybe that's good too, but like what time of year it is, and what my needs are, and having a practice that based on that. However, with that, it's also really, it can so easily just be like out into nothing. And I definitely had many months where I've been like building up my practice, especially when it comes to something like yoga and meditation, where I need to push myself a little more in the morning. It's not like, it's not every morning I get up and I'm like, yes, I want to do yoga. Most mornings I'm like, nah. And then I do it and then I'm like, yeah, thank you. So with some of these things, and then I go to my moon time and then I drop everything and I just have, 3 days of drinking cacao and being in my sacred temple, and that's amazing. And I'm so grateful that I get to have life like that. But that also means that on the other side of that, it's like having to like reinvent the wheel definitely had months where it's been like that, and it's like, okay, we begin again. And so I think with having a more cyclical kind of a practice, it also demands a little, or at least for me, demands my inner masculine energy to hold a little more space. And part of how I do that is that I have to go in and plan a little more. It's almost like prepping food. So it's like, okay, we know that we're both going to be trashed at this time, so let's make a whole bunch of dal, put it in the freezer, and then we can take it out when we're trashed, right? I feel like there's a little bit of that also coming with holding space for my practices. And definitely sometimes of the month, like basically my practice is I need to get some good nutrition into this body. I need to have not too many hours without getting food, and I need to like be hydrated and rest. And try not to feel guilty about not doing anything. That's like, okay, that's the core of it, nourishment, and just like get food at the right hour, you know. And other times it can expand into this whole, you know, dancing and meditating and sitting with the plants and just being so open and intuitive and listening, and everything just flows into place and it becomes this great expression of life. But I feel that these kind of great expressions, they can come because of a practice. That's why these flowers, that is what keeps the flowers from being able to bloom. And when I say flowers, I mean like these amazing moments in life and in time where I'm like, whoa, I'm so grateful for this. Or like, wow. And especially with working with people, let's say the other day I was holding space for this whole group of women a whole day, and then when I came home I was trashed, right? And I just laid down and just felt it and was just with that. And the day after I was just spending a whole day with my yoni steam chair, and I had some cacao, and I was sleeping and just really making sure my baselines are like nourished. Because when I think that's another thing with practices. It's so easy to be like, oh, then I have to do like 2 hours of yoga every day and, you know, blah, blah, blah. But sometimes the basis of it, just like get rest. Don't feel guilty. Or that's even like try to be okay with not doing as much as you thought you could do. Or like being okay with not being as good as I want to be. And it's beautiful that I have ideas and that I want to go somewhere, and that's amazing. It's a really beautiful part of the people that have that, but it can also sometimes be heavy on not just, okay, today this is the practice, right? Yeah, so for me a cyclical practice is also that I tune into where I am in my period. Like for instance, right now I'm like just on the other side of my ovulation, so I'm still like in a high summer kind of vibe, but I'm slowly going into a more introverted. This is a space for me where I really have to start. Okay, we're going down a hill and just like starting to gather things for the winter. And the more I at this time nourishes myself, the more my practice becomes really seriously about giving myself slowness, giving myself time. Then once my moon time hit, I don't have to spend the whole time struggling of being like, oh, everything is so terrible. It's like, oh yeah, something has to die, let it go. And then it's like, wow, all these new things are coming. And then so it completely transforms that, which also means that I can actually have practices on my moon time. That's not just like first aid of having a super stressed month before, but which are actually the next step of not just like first aid, but actually starting to build up some energy and starting to working with the energy. Yeah. And one thing I want to mention here is that I'm super excited for next year, 2023. I'm going to start a course about practices. So I think it's going to be called Powerful Plant Practices, where I'm going to be sharing both online and in 2 weekend retreats my practices. And we're going to there's really, the whole focus here is helping people integrate powerful practice